I realize this is a huge thing. And I meant to say early and I didn't say it. I know of two obvious addictions that by God's grace I have overcome. Everybody, I got 3 tips for you to overcome your food addiction. You may or may not feel like it's an addiction. A lot of people will just admit, I mean, I have an addiction. Well, let's start out with this. You're not addicted to food. You're addicted to this feeling you get when you have a certain amount of food. So let's clarify that. We all need to eat. We know that. So we're not addicted to food. We're addicted to too much food. So Gerald May would say to stop it. This is number 1, and don't say, well, my goodness, this is... Dr. Gerald May wrote a book, Addiction and Grace, and he says one of the best ways to beat an addiction is to stop doing it. And you might be like, well, that's the whole thing I'm trying to do is stop doing it. What we oftentimes do is give the addiction more power than it actually has. It only has the power you give it. I remember one day my wife, she'd been drinking coffee regularly for a while, months or years. And she said, I think I'm going to quit drinking coffee. And I was like, that's not that easy. And she stopped. That morning, she didn't drink it. And she never drank caffeinated coffee again. There's any coffee if it ain't caffeinated, right? So it's like, how did she do that? She just stopped. There's 2 ways to stop. There's like she did. You just decide to do it, or you're forced to do it. Because you have 3 options. Decide to stop the addiction, be forced to stop the addiction, or keep going with the addiction and see where it leads. Most of us would agree it's going to lead to something bad. Possibly, if it's a drug addiction, probably going to lead to death, right? And food addiction in many instances will lead to death too, at least a more difficult life. So you can decide to stop. Now, you may be, a lot of times the reason that looks like it's so difficult is we're thinking, I've got to stop forever. And the reality is you don't have to stop forever. You only have to stop for today. So that's number 1, stop doing it. Number 2 is to don't settle for feeling good. Now, hear me. We all want to feel good. We all like to feel good. And we all will seek out feeling good. But you need to not settle for the wrong feeling good. And there is a right feeling good and a wrong feeling good. Would you agree with that? Because there are drugs that you've never tried that would make you feel good. And you have... Either you're not aware of them, so you haven't tried them, and some people are just waiting. Yeah, bring it on, right? And they're going to run into problems. But some people are like, I need to be selective with what I'm going to use to make myself feel good. You need to be more selective, because if you're choosing drunkenness every night for your feel good, if you're choosing abuse of some kind, if you're choosing to overeat, okay, that's a wrong choice. And you've got to be willing to say, even though this helps me feel good, I need to pick something that's okay to help me feel good. Otherwise, it's going to end in something that's going to make all that feel good not worth it. So you need to pick something that, even though it makes you feel good, in the end, it's not going to steal from you. Because the food addiction will steal from you. So if you're not going to walk in that truth, it's more difficult. So walking in the truth that there are things that make me feel good that are okay, then there are things that make me feel good that are not okay. So we can make an idol out of, well, feeling good is my ultimate thing. If that's your ultimate thing, there's no hope for you, okay? You've got to be willing to say, some things that make me feel good, I'm going to be okay with. Some things I'm not okay with. And then before I give you my third one, I want to invite you to join my 21-day transformation, where we can really walk with you through this process in 21 days, so that you get the breakthrough you're looking for. There is a link in the description. Jump in our next group. We'd love to have you in there. You'll be glad you did it. And number 3, and don't let me lose those of you that are not people of faith. Okay, whether you're a person of faith or not, hear me out on this one. Number 3 is to pray for grace. And you're like, well, I'm not a spiritual person. Well, you might want to become one. Here's the deal. How's what you've been doing working for you? If you're not willing to think outside of the box you've been living in, you may be missing. The magic is in the thing you've not trying. The magic is in the work that you haven't done. And so I would encourage you, even if you're not a person of faith, that's I'm not wanting you to feel condemned or anything by me, but I'm just challenging you to maybe be a little bit open to something you've rejected, because grace teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions. Okay, what's a worldly passion? You tell me, what's a worldly passion? There's a lot of worldly passions. There's passions that are good. There's worldly passions. There's passions that we shouldn't have. Grace teaches us to live self-controlled. Grace teaches us to live uprightly, godly lives today. Teaches us to do that. So we need to be taught something that we're not doing when we are being led around by an addiction. When we are overcome by an addiction, grace can teach us to be an overcomer. Guys, I realize this is a huge thing, and I meant to say early and I didn't say it. I know of two obvious addictions that by God's grace I have overcome. They're obvious to me, and I probably have some that are not obvious. Okay, we're not trying to help you deal with the addictions or the unhealthy attachments in your life that are not obvious. We're picking on the obvious ones, and I think that's the best place to start, because until you deal with the obvious one, the lesser ones are not going to be clear to you. The further, if we go back to the first one we said, to stop doing it, the longer you stop doing this, the more power you're going to have. So stop it today. I'm Trainer Joe. Train your brain and transform your body.